as I said, I'm going to actually use this as an episode of the Marc Medley Show. And you know there are two different shows. There's the Reading Circle with Marc Medley, which you hear live on the radio and all around the world on gobrave.org. And then there's the Marc Medley Show, which is a podcast, which I actually record and then release it all around the world. So, without a doubt, let me go on into this because I'll have to come up with a title with it a little bit later on. Without a doubt, in my mind, there is definitely, and I know we always talk about good versus evil. There's no question. There's a lot of evil that's going on right now. And I know they say we can't blame everything on Satan. We can't blame everything on the devil. But I will say this. Satan is having his heyday. He's having an absolute field day. And in my mind, he has been now for some time. But it seems to be getting progressively worse. I don't even watch the news, but however, I stay up kind of like what's going on Twitter, or either my sister or my aunt or somebody will kind of ask me about a story that I wasn't aware of that I'll now go find out a little bit more about. Case in point, this situation in Mississippi, where we had a FedEx driver who was out doing his job. He was delivering packages, and he gets chased down because he was an African-American male. He gets chased down by some Caucasian men. Now, mind you, this is a young man who is doing his job. Folks are always talking about black men won't work, or black men are lazy, black men, don't do their jobs. Well, this young man is a black man who was working. And as he's working, he now gets accosted or chased by now some Caucasian men down there in Mississippi. And it's very similar to the Ahmaud Arbery case, where Ahmaud, as you know, was jogging, and now these guys come up behind him in the truck and, they block him off and begin shooting. He ultimately gets killed. Had this young man not been in that truck and gotten to the highway, he would have been killed as well. The bullet holes actually pierced the truck as well as went through some of the packages that was in the truck. Now, folks, this is ridiculous. That, they're always talking about driving while black. Now, in this young man's case, he was working while black. I don't know what it is in folks that feel, because they're not police officers. So I don't understand why they would now be ordering somebody to stop in a vehicle, or either blocking a vehicle off and then pulling out guns and shooting. I mean, this is not vigilante times. This is not, everybody just feel like if you want to shoot. But that's what it seems like. So they try to block the truck, and he's able to swerve around, drive around them, and they're chasing him now. And then when he calls dispatch is kind of like, asking him, well, what did you do? I didn't do anything. I was trying to deliver the package. They started chasing me. But they're nonchalant, cavalier, agile. Okay, just get back to the, as quick as you can. What do you mean get back as quick as you can? He just called in to say someone's shooting at me. And their response is, okay, get back to the station, get back to the whatever they call it, the station or the hub or whatever. Get back as quick as you can. So he's still being chased, and he calls a second time, gets a different dispatcher, and the same kind of response is given. Okay, just get back as quick as you can. So now when their guys they catch the guys, the beginning charge, because I think the charge has been upgraded, the beginning charge was aggravated assault. Now these guys shot 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 bullets into a truck, a FedEx truck, and now you're talking about aggravated assault. That's not aggravated assault. That's attempted murder. And this one was not on video. This is what they were saying. Like the Ahmaud Arbery case, they had videoed that, but this one was not on video. So this young man could have gotten killed, and nobody would have known nothing about it, or what happened and how. And they're talking about aggravated assault. Now this is getting really ridiculous here, because now up here in New Jersey, down in the Bridgewater Mall, you had a case where it was an African-American male. They got into a fight in the mall with a Caucasian male. The police come. They set the Caucasian male down on the couch And they literally slam the African-American male down to the floor, knee him, wrestle him, and put handcuffs on him. Now, there were two people in this fight. There were two folks in the fight. There was the white boy and the black boy. Okay? White man, black man. Caucasian, African-American. However you want to say it, that's the way it is. That's what they are. It is what it is. You're African-American, you're black, you're white, you're Caucasian. It is what it is. But in any event, they take the Caucasian young man and they sit him on the couch. And the African-American male, they rough him up, throw him to the floor, and put handcuffs on him. And nobody could understand, well, I could have seen it if you did that to both. If you threw both of them down on the ground and you handcuffed both. I could have even seen it if you put both of them on the couch, sat them down and said, okay, what's going on here? But no, there was a very distinct dichotomy in treatment. Very distinct. So for those who keep walking around here acting and pretending as if, privilege doesn't exist, for those who keep running around here acting like, oh no, there's no difference, black people aren't treated any different than white people, you're delusional, because it is in front of you on a constant basis. It couldn't get any more blatant than what happened in the mall. It really couldn't get any more blatant than what happened with that young man driving for FedEx. A couple of years ago, back in 2018, and I was talking about this yesterday, sharing it with somebody, because it was a Puerto Rican young lady that I was talking to, and I was sharing her. A couple of years ago, there was a young lady that had on a shirt that had a Puerto Rican flag on it. And this white man comes up to her and almost attacks her because she was wearing the Puerto Rican flag. Now, folks, for whatever reason, including our former president, still don't understand that Puerto Rico is a part of the United States. It is a part of America. Okay? So he's steady taunting her, talking about she's not American, take that off, how dare you wear that here in America, yada, 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 yada. If you go on YouTube, it's there. If you put on a young lady with Puerto Rican flag shirt being attacked, it'll come up. All right? That was 2 years ago. But we still have folks to understand Puerto Rico is a part of America, including our former president. So I started talking about this whole thing with evil and good and Satan versus God. No question is out there. Because, and I'm flowing through this in terms of the different events that are going on. You have all these young folks committing suicide. You had the young lady, and I talked about it for the last couple of weeks in terms of, the 30-year-old former USA queen that took herself out in a violent manner because in her mind, 30 was it. Like life ended at 30, and she made sure it did end for her at 30. Then you had Regina King's son, 26, that took himself out. And then the other day I opened an email from a friend of mine. Actually, she's going to be on the show in a few weeks. Pamela Samuels Young. I got an email from her, and she was telling me that Venus and Serena Williams' nephew, 21 years old, killed himself. That he was suffering from bipolar. Now, all these, because I've been talking a lot and doing a lot of focus and emphasis on mental health, because that's a hot topic and it's a lot going on in that area, which I honestly believe COVID has contributed to. But not only has COVID contributed to this, there's a lot of satanic and demonic that is contributing to this as well. And it didn't just start, because I had a situation the other day where I was interviewing a student, for a prospective student to be in my school in September. Had his mother and him there, and we were chatting, going through the interview process, and the little boy says, I get distracted very easily. And I said, well, how do you know that, and what do you mean by that? He said, well, if the teacher's teaching, I'll just go and watch something on YouTube. I said, hold on, wait a minute. If the teacher is teaching, you will just tune her or him out and just go to YouTube and start watching the video? He said, yes. I said, well, what do you watch? So he told me it was this cartoon called Ed's World, EDDSWORLD, Ed's World. So I said, okay. I'm sitting at my desk. I go to my computer and I pull it up on my computer on YouTube, Ed's World. And it was like a little 3-minute clip there of the cartoon. And I turned it on, and within that 3-minute clip, the character was talking to another character. But within his character, he came out of character, and this demonic, satanic voice came up. So he was talking one way 1 minute, and then all of a sudden, he just went into this satanic, demonic voice, and then the characters pushed somebody off the cliff, and they all laughed. Now, this is a 10-year-old, 11-year-old that's watching this on a constant. That's what I mean by programming. Literally being programmed to be desensitized, to be persuaded or leaning toward things that are demonic, things that are satanic. And this stuff is by design, folks. Let's be real. This is by design. That's what I mean. Satan is having his heyday in terms of it's in our TV programming. It's in our radio, it's in our videos, this stuff is done by design, and folks are taking it in, and now all these voices are beginning to talk to them in their heads, feeding them that they're no good, telling them that they're less than they are, telling them that they can't be loved, that nobody should be loving them, that nobody should be, the world is going to end, the world ends at 30. Because I shared with you last week, I believe it was, there was a quote that says, when the enemy whispers to you, the enemy is whispering the opposite of what you are. So if you're beautiful, the enemy is whispering to you that you're ugly. If you're attractive or if you're lovable, the enemy is whispering to you you're unlovable. Whatever it is that you are positive, the enemy is whispering the opposite of that to you. And now you're constantly being, it's on repeat, by the way. It is on repeat on a constant basis. You're unlovable. You're no good. Nobody will want you. Nobody loves you. Remember what you did. You're guilty. You're this. Remember back then. Remember when this one did that to you. And it's on repeat. And it's continuously on replay. And before you know it now, you have somebody jumping off a building 60 stories high who is actually beautiful. But the voices in the head was saying you're worth nothing, you're worthless. That's demonic, that's satanic. And what I'm saying is it's being programmed from a young age. If there are kids out there, and I just saw that little 3-minute clip, I don't know what the title of that particular episode was, but within a 3-minute clip, you had a character, and there were some funny looking little characters as it was, but you had a character that was speaking normal 1 minute, all of a sudden went into a demonic satanic voice the next minute, and then went back to the normal voice. That's satanic. And it's being programmed into our children, and we're wondering why we're getting what we're getting as we're dealing with children. You're wondering why you're getting what I've already this year alone have dealt with 2 4th graders that threatened suicide. And part of it is because of this stuff that they're watching, of what they're watching on television, what they're watching in these videos. Because they're literally being programmed. I was speaking with somebody yesterday that a few years ago, Fox actually had, I believe it was Fox, it might have been one of the other stations, but I'm almost sure it was Fox, introduced a show called Lucifer. When the show was introduced, I almost fell off the chair. Are you kidding me? That there's actually going to be a weekly series on Lucifer. And you wonder why we are where we are? A weekly series that's highlighting Satan. This is by design. This is by program. All this stuff is feeding into why we keep getting what we are getting. And then we scratch our heads and wonder, well, why did they do that? How did that happen? We keep scratching our heads about this stuff when the answer is right in front of us. So now we've rolled the clock back, going back to the race thing. We roll the clock back that anybody that's white feel they can do whatever they want to anybody that's black. Because going back to the story with the Puerto Rican lady that had the Puerto Rican flag on her T-shirt, there was a police officer standing right next to her. And on the video, you can hear her saying, "Officer, would you please get this man away from me? Officer, this man is harassing me. Officer, would you get this man away from me?" Officer didn't do nothing. And this was on video. The officer did not say, "Sir, leave her alone." The officer did not say, "Sir, if you continue harassing her, we're going to have to detain or arrest you." No. Now let's go back to the the FedEx driver. Let's reverse the situation. Let's play devil's advocate, if you will. No pun intended, because I was talking about Satan and the devil. But what if that would have been a Caucasian driver in an urban area, and a bunch of African American men started chasing him down and now shooting into the truck? I don't think dispatch would have been saying, oh, just get back here as soon as you can. I think the police, the FBI, SWAT, everybody would have been there if this was a Caucasian driver being shot at by a bunch of African American men. But see, so now we're down there in Mississippi, down there in those areas in the woods or whatever. And this young man is calling for help, and still everybody's all blasé. Okay, well, just hurry up and get back. Hurry up and get back. And I just called you and told you I'm being shot at. There are some things that are just not adding up here, folks. They're just not adding up. You have politicians that can get behind the microphone and say anything they would like. And then you get Whoopi Goldberg that says, well, it just seems to me that's man's inhumanity to man, or man being mean to man, what have you. And she gets suspended from The View for 2 weeks. Yet you have Marjorie Taylor Greene and everybody else behind the microphone saying everything as vile and vulgar as they would like. And it seems as if nothing happens. You can't make me believe there's not a double standard. You just cannot make me believe that. So folks start talking about reverse racism. That's misused. Because if you reverse racism, then that means you take it out. You take it away. The reverse of something is you go the other way. So when you're reversing racism, that means you're moving away from racism if you go in the opposite direction. Reverse racism is not racism being placed from another group to another group. But that's how it's used. Oh, now it's reverse racism. No, if you're reversing racism, you're doing away with it altogether. You're not reversing it if it's now being placed on another group. That's not reverse. But see, that's what I'm talking about. Even online, we were talking about words a couple of minutes ago. Words are powerful, and yet we just kind of say any old thing, and everybody just go right along with it. Just like that's why I tell you all the time, the news can give any soundbite they want, and everybody will flock to that soundbite. Nobody analyzes anything. Nobody says, does that make sense to you? So, all right, I had the chance to do commentary, but there was so many of these things going on between the various suicides, between the shootings, because you got this whole thing. I mean, this is just getting really, truly ridiculous with these white men chasing down black men. We're going back to like the 30s and 20s and 40s and 50s. We have truly gone backwards. When you can't even deliver a package without the possibility of being killed. When you can't go out for a jog without the possibility of being killed. Because see, I'm a bike rider. I'm a cyclist. When I leave my house, I don't come back until I've done at minimum 20 miles. A minimum of 20 miles. I do not come back until my odometer says I've done 20 miles. And I ride through all kinds of communities to get those 20 miles in. I don't just stay within the confines of the urban area. I go out into the suburbs. I go out into the parks. I go out 20 miles. I'll do 10 out, 10 back. And so 10 in my surrounding community is not necessarily urban area. But I should not have to be out on my bicycle wondering, is somebody going to run me over or shoot me because I'm black? But that's where we're getting to. Ahmaud Arbery should not have been having to worry about whether he was going to come back home or not because he was a black man jogging. And yet, he didn't make it home. When does it end? When does it stop? Because again, everybody's running around here with blinders on, or either their head stuck in the sand like an ostrich. Privilege? What's that? Oh no, that doesn't exist. Double standard? No, that doesn't happen. You're treated the same way I am. I mean, A few weeks ago, Mitch McConnell. Because, see, this is the deal. This is the deal. We refuse to just call things as they are. That's why you hear me saying white, black. It is what it is. I'm black. You're white. Okay. But we always trying to be politically correct or either soft slope stuff. That's what happened to Mitch McConnell a few weeks ago when we were talking about the voting thing. I understand what Mitch was trying to say. Mitch actually thought he was, supporting black people. But what Mitch's comment said was African Americans vote just like, I got to get the exact words, but it was African Americans vote just as much as Americans. His statement was off because it now said, well, African Americans are not Americans. And that's exactly the way it was received. African Americans vote just like Americans. Now, had he said African Americans vote like any other American, he might have been on safer ground. But the fact that he distinguished African American from American, that put folks off to say, oh, you're saying African Americans are not American. But what Mitch was really trying to say, and this is the point of what I'm saying, is what Mitch was really trying to say was black people vote just as much as white people. He'd have been better off saying that. Black people have just as much right and can vote just as much as white people can. That's what he should have said, and he'd have been okay. But because he was trying to get into this American versus African American thing, that's where he got on thin ice. That's where he wound up getting messed up. Had he just said black people can vote just like white people. Now, that's not true either, but that would have been, in his mind, a more accurate statement than what actually came out. And how that came out really kind of caused everybody to go back at him. Say, oh, so you're saying African Americans are not American? That's what your statement just said. When do we just love each other and be done with this thing? When do we just, look, I see you as a human being. I don't care about your skin color. It's not that I don't see your skin color, because I see it. I'm not blind to it. But that's not an issue for me because you're a human being. And I've said it before. It's the differences that makes life interesting. Rather than seeing the differences as a liability, we really must need to start seeing our differences as an asset. The differences are an asset, folks. The differences is not a liability. And yet we keep on trying to use the difference in skin color or gender or sexual preference or height or weight or age. We keep trying to use the differences as a liability instead of seeing the differences as an asset. And that's where in our history, we continue to keep going around this same stupid road. Halftime show at the Super Bowl. I did not watch the Super Bowl. I just wasn't in the mood to watch football that day. I didn't watch it. And normally during halftime, I never watched the halftime show. At that point, historically for me, at halftime, I go wash my dishes. I didn't watch the game at all, so I didn't have to worry about halftime show. But it's my understanding that the halftime show caused an absolute uproar because it was hip-hop. Because it was hip-hop, it caused an uproar. And then you had Eminem, who is Caucasian, at the end, take a knee to celebrate Colin Kaepernick. And Eminem was the only, to my knowledge, Caucasian on the stage. And he, at the end of the act, of the performance, took the knee to pay tribute to Colin Kaepernick. Folks have been lambasting that halftime show. I went on Twitter the next day and the Twitter sphere was lit up over the halftime show. Now, I've seen country musicians on halftime show. I've seen hard rock musicians on the halftime show. I've seen Motown artists on the halftime show. I've seen crossover artists on the halftime show, because I don't watch it, but I know who the performers are. I think last year it was The Weeknd. So you had all different kind of music on the halftime show, and yet this year, because it was hip hop and because they were trying to send an intentional message, oh my goodness, it caused an uproar. One of my students in 4th grade said, Mr. Medley, I don't understand this color thing. I don't understand why one person thinks they're better than another because the color of their skin. My response to him was, kid, I don't either.